Progress.
Welcome, everyone, and I'm going to call this meeting to order. And this is a special meeting of the City Council Budget and Finance Committee to deal with a plan that the council had approved to address issues regarding the police department budget and some changes and a way of getting a lot of community input into perhaps making some changes. With that, I've called the meeting to order, and I'm going to just let the record reflect that all of the members of the committee, the Budget and Finance Committee, are present. Councilmember Sarah Lamnin, Councilmember Aisha Wahab, or I should say Mayor Pro Tem Aisha Wahab, and myself. And the next thing on the agenda is public comments. But since public comments are for this meeting going to be limited only to items on the agenda, I'm going to suggest that we not have them now, and that we have them after we hear each of the items on the agenda, so that people can comment after hearing the staff report. Does anybody have a problem with that? Sarah, Aisha? Okay. All right. So with that, we're going to go ahead to item number 1, and that is a review of the police department budget. And I think I will turn that first over to the city manager to introduce the topic.
Great. Thank you, Mayor and council members. Tonight we have Chief Chaplain and Captain Matthews, along with a number of other police department staff members. The committee had asked to do and receive an overview of the police department budget, and so that is what the presentation will walk through this evening, and we'll give an opportunity for council members to ask questions. And obviously there's a lot of information in the police department budget, so this is the first conversation we have. As we've mentioned, we have the opportunity over the next couple of months to have additional conversations. If there's additional information that the council would like to receive, more specifics, we can follow up after that. So I'm happy to, I think, Chief, did you want to make some comments before Captain Matthews kicks off the presentation?
Thank you, Kelly. Well, just we're in uncharted territory. I talked to the staff, and this is the first time we're participating in this process. I want to thank the Chief Financial Officer, Dustin Clausen, for his help with this. And presenting tonight will be Captain Brian Matthews. He will be doing the PowerPoint and the overview of the review of the police department budget. And I just want to thank the council members and the mayor for an opportunity to present tonight. And with that, I will turn it back over to the city manager, Kelly McAdoo.
And I think I'm going to just turn it over to Captain Matthews to get us started.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
All right. Cool. And can everybody see my screen that I am trying to share right now?
Yes.
All right. Perfect. Thank you for the opportunity to present. And before I get started, I want to thank Dustin and his staff, Nicole and Rick, and our analyst, Adam, for all the work they did on this report. This was certainly a team effort. And the first slide here is simply an illustration of the overall police department budget. It's broken out into 6 divisions. 5 of them are functional divisions, each run by a commander who reports directly to the chief of police. And then 1 division is for budget purposes only. That's our grants division. And as you'll see, the patrol division is the largest portion of our budget. That's where most of our sworn staff work. The next slide kind of illustrates the percentage breakdown of the overall police department budget. And I think as you'll find with any municipality or county, a majority of the police department budget is salary and benefits for staff. That makes up almost 90% of the police department's budget. A little under 8% are for internal service charges. These are fees that the police department pays to other city departments for services, and then the remaining 3% maintenance and utilities and supplies and services. This is a lot of the overhead and operating costs, recruitment, training, and so on. We also annually are allotted right around $3 million budgeted for overtime. And then the personnel and training unit, training and recruiting, makes up almost 40% of the department's discretionary budget. It's the biggest portion of the discretionary money that the police department has. And the remaining money is kind of spread throughout the department for operational costs, office equipment, contract services, some of the DNA and forensic evidence analysis that we do, and training in other areas of the police department. Moving on to the Office of the Chief. The Office of the Chief makes up about 1.6% of the overall general fund budget for the police department. And within the Office of the Chief is the internal affairs and our CLIA accreditation manager. And these are all folks who directly report to the chief. Next, we'll move on to the Special Operations Division. Makes up 9.6% of the Hayward Police Department's general fund budget. And again, going back to training and recruiting, that's about 38.5% of our discretionary money that's spent. And as you'll see on the illustration on the right, the different units that comprise the Special Operations Division and their cost. Moving on to the Patrol Division. Again, the largest portion of the budget, 43.9%. It's where most of the sworn staff members live within the budget. This is a division that's also responsible for our field training program. So at any given time, we have about 15 to 20 field training officers who are responsible for kind of the hands-on instruction and training of folks graduating from the academy, and then also lateral employees, so police officers who we hire from other police departments. Next is the Investigations Division. Makes up 23.6% of the Hayward Police Department's general fund budget. About 23.5% of that goes to the Youth and Family Services Bureau, although a lot of those funds are recovered through some of the grant programs that are outlined here. So the Our Kids contract, delinquency prevention contract, contracts, this is more than one, are some of the grant monies that we receive for this, for YFSB. Our Support Services Division, this is the division that consists primarily of professional staff employees here at the police department. Makes up 17.3% of the general fund budget for the police department. And you can see some of the units that are housed within the Special Support Services Division in the illustration to the right. Moving on to the Special Programs and Grants Division. Again, this is a budget-specific division only. We have 3 grants from outside entities that allow us to do certain things and provide certain services. We have the STEP grant. It's an acronym for a traffic-related grant, Selective Traffic Enforcement Grant. It's primarily for pays for staff to engage in DUI enforcement and education, seatbelt enforcement, cell phone enforcement, hands-free stuff. The other grants, one is the Burn Justice Grant, and that supports facilities maintenance and capital equipment. And then the BSCC grant, it's a grant from the Bureau of State Corrections, and that's funding that we utilize to provide mental health intervention training here at the police department. As you all know, that since the pandemic hit, the city's been trying to reconcile itself from a financial standpoint. And I think some of the cost reduction strategies are outlined on this slide here. We have a total of 12 frozen positions on the sworn side, and then several sworn frozen positions on the professional staff side. From a department-wide, we did a 10% reduction in supplies and services, and the largest reduction being to the personnel and training budget. A lot of that was going to happen anyway. I think the one thing that happened with training during the pandemic was they stopped holding it, so that made the most sense. And then reductions to the internal service fund and capital budget. Some of those costs were deferred. Some of our ongoing challenges, I think maintaining existing service levels has been a challenge for us. So right now we're operating without a narcotics unit. Our SROs and other staff members have been reassigned to patrol to fill staffing vacancies. And our staffing numbers literally change daily. And a lot of that has to do with folks getting injured, people taking, federal and state leave that they're entitled to. Right now, on paper, and again, it may have changed today, but when this presentation was built, we had 46 physical vacancies with both sworn and professional staff. That includes the 12 that were frozen as a cost-saving measure related to the pandemic. And we have 64 full-time employees who are not deployable in the field for a variety of different reasons. Some injury, some are in training, and that doesn't include, folks who take some discretionary time, comp time, vacations, or unplanned sick leave. One of the other challenges that we face is compliance with unfunded mandates. A lot of the legislation that's gone into effect in the last year or two has done so without providing municipalities with additional funding or the ability to add staff to be able to conduct that work. And so that's been a challenge, trying to find where that is best suited to fit within the department as it's currently structured without creating too much of an impact to providing services to the community. And then recruitment and retention, recruiting new employees to keep up with attrition. When positions are frozen, we lose the ability to do continual recruitment. And, the reality of hiring and training a police officer taking a year before they become operational independently. And then we have employees that are actually leaving faster than we can get folks trained up and operational. And that's also been a challenge. And with that, we'll be happy to answer any questions that anybody has.
You're muted, Mayor.
So thanks. Aisha or Sarah, do either of you? I'm trying to.
Did we want to go to the public comments and then come back to council, or what's your procedure?
Yeah, I just thought if you had any questions right now about it, but if you want to go right to, if not, we will go right to, and I see one hand raised from attendees, and that is Zachariah Okenda. Zachariah, can you join us? I see your picture. Hi. And you unmuted yourself, so we should be able to hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Excellent. How much time do I have? I want to make sure I can prioritize appropriately some of the comments and thoughts I have.
Well, we don't have a lot of attendees tonight, so go ahead and take 3 minutes.
Okay. So I think, thanks, Captain Matthews, for the report on this. I think this is really timely. I'm glad the city is doing this. Some of the initial questions I have are about I guess meaning of some of the meaning of different expenses that were reduced when you had these breakouts in the staff report on personnel. versus non-personnel reductions. I guess maybe I'm just inquisitive and want to learn more about what that actually entails in each of those categories. I'm thinking about trying to find here. I have some notes. Sorry, I'm trying to kind of sort through some different notes that I've taken. Specifically, just as an example, in the patrol section, I saw there was an increase of 2.1 million over the last year in personnel, for example. And I was wondering, because in the staff report it says 92 uniformed officers. I'm wondering, are there officers that have been hired newly? Is that kind of part of the budget, an expectation number of positions you have an intention to filling? I'm just trying to understand a little bit more about what those numbers mean. And if you don't mind, I'll kind of move on. I'm just trying to pose some of those questions if they could get answered. What I wanted to point out in the ongoing staffing and financial challenges, which is kind of the thing I think I want to prioritize for my remaining, minute and a half, is the comment. I want to find it. I think it's on page 13, top of page 10 of the budget staff report, which talks about not having the capacity for the illegal narcotics enforcement, follow-up investigations on certain fraud, things like that. I wanted to, pose a thought on the role of potentially the policy innovation workshop moving forward, or just how thoughts are, how the different uses of personnel is kind of being considered when I'm looking at like vice intelligence, narcotics investment units. Like, are those numbers current on the attachment 2 sheet? Because I just look at those as priorities for our enforcement, and they seem like opportunities, I think, to think about how to consolidate those units from vice and narcotics into special victims or other things. I'm happy to talk more about it. I don't have a lot of time. I have some actual thoughts I wrote out on it. Maybe I'll just follow up with an email. Anyway, thanks for sharing. Hopefully some of my questions kind of made it through in a legible way.
I think so. Captain Matthews or Chief, do you want to respond?
Yeah, I can. The patrol related question, I think the 92, that's a number of budgeted positions for the patrol division. And that's what the ideal would look like if it was fully staffed. Having been here in 22 years, I'm not sure that's been the case ever, but that's the goal. And I think the increase in personnel, and Adam can correct me if I'm wrong, I think the increase in personnel, the number of budgeted positions did not go up, but I think the increase is reflective of an increase in either salary or the cost of benefits, right? Is that correct, Adam?
Yes, that would be correct. I'm running a report to confirm, but yes.
Okay, thank you. And then I think the other kind of the organizational comments, I think we're going to get some questions in an email, it sounds like. So hopefully I answered everything that I can answer now. Chief, feel free to add anything.
And just generically to answer the questions posed by Zachariah, there are several different disciplines, and it would be tough to combine. And just kind of a quick overview. For instance, if you have a narcotic officer testifying in court, they have to qualify as a narcotics expert. And then you bring in a vice person that's testifying, say about human trafficking. That's a whole different expertise. Of course, you love the cross-pollination of the units, but you still have to have folks focused on those disciplines to service our victims to the best of their ability. So, theoretically, there's crossover, but you still want to maintain the different lanes for the different disciplines. And again, once you send the email out, we'll definitely be able to take a deeper dive for you. But just know that to service the folks that are victims of these crimes, you want someone who has an expertise in that particular area. Which is why when you see police departments, as well as prosecutory units, and even units that do defense work, there's folks that have their particular expertise. I hope that kind of answers it generically. We can do a deeper dive when you send the email.
Okay. Seeing no other hands raised right now, I'll move on to comments from the members of the committee. Who wants to go first? Aisha?
I'm still gathering my thoughts, but I'm happy to ask some questions. Primarily, one, I do appreciate the presentation as well as the report. Just some general questions if our chief or Captain Matthews can answer. Has crime gone up since the shelter-in-place order?
Some crimes have, and some have declined. Just as an example, with the shelter in place, what you would suspect would drop, definitely would drop. Residential burglaries are down because people are at home, but commercial burglaries are up because they're not at work. So some crimes have dropped. Obviously, last year we saw a large rise in our homicides. We literally eclipsed almost 3 years. We almost caught 3 years worth of murders in 1 year last year. And keep in mind, that was with the shelter in place. We also saw a spike in our shootings, as well as our aggravated assaults, other than firearms.
Okay. And my follow-up was what type of crime, but you addressed that, so I appreciate that. And then I didn't see this in the report, and I know I've asked for this a couple of times. So, hopefully as we have the Lean Innovation Workshop and, the different groups talk to each other a little bit more, we can have this for our edification. I'd like for us to have stats on the calls we receive, primarily the number of citations we give out, the number of arrests, the number of, basically data, right? And I know that all of you guys know I'm into that, right? So I definitely want to see just what is the data trends year over year. And if we want to start in, 2015, 2016, 2017, pick a date and we can kind of take a look at that, but something relatively recent, but maybe like the last 3 years or so. And then I do want to ask, the freezing of the 12 officer positions that the rest of council voted on, was it 6 months or 12 months?
I believe it was 12 months.
12 months, yes.
Okay, so it was the full 12 months. Okay.
Yes.
And I know there's a lot of discussion whether or not that was going to be for a review in January. And then were non-sworn staff, the positions for them, frozen, or were individuals hired between that budget vote till today?
Most of the professional staff positions have been frozen, except for critical vacancies in public safety. So, for example, dispatcher positions have not been frozen, but other professional staff positions have, and we've done that throughout the city. So that was for all non-public safety positions, and if there's an exception, the department head makes a special request to myself and the finance director to review if they want to fill the position before the 6-month period is over.
Okay, so that is interesting. That's a nuanced, a particular piece of or direction, I guess. And then as far as our call center as well, because I know that they're on the line. SEIU has been a part of this process as well. How has their work been impacted in the sense that COVID, with a shelter-in-place order, the amount of hours that they're working, these freezes, they are significantly understaffed, correct?
That is correct. Right now, communication has, there are allotted for 28 full-time employees. They have 6 vacancies. Right now, we're actively recruiting for a communications administrator. And it's tough, dispatch is always tough because passing all the hurdles to become a 911 dispatcher is probably one of the toughest positions in our agency. And it's difficult, but with the 6 vacancies, we struggle to fill them. Quite frankly, everybody in the Bay Area and beyond is recruiting.
Okay. And they've been vacant for how long?
It varies. We have some people come in and fill in the positions as trainees and not make it through the training. And we filled a few. So it varies. So it's tough to say the 6 vacancies. It would be there's peaks and valleys for that particular number.
Okay. And I do in future conversations, I do want a representative from the call center to be able to speak on their behalf. I know they report into you, Chief, but just for the longevity of kind of some of the struggles that they've dealt with, that wasn't really highlighted too much in the staff report either, and they are part of this conversation. Those are my questions for now, Mayor. I do have comments, but I'll let anybody else ask a question.
Councilmember Ohab, just to let you know that there is a communications dispatcher serving on the staff team for the workshop series. So there will be a dispatcher participating in that.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that, but if we can include them on staff reports and just for them to be present here so they can address some of the concerns as well.
So do you have comments on this item or in general on, because I want to kind of move on to the next item after we hear from, Councilmember Lambden and I. Okay,
so I do have comments, but I thought you were doing questions at first.
No, I asked for questions before we started, but that's okay. Why don't you go ahead? Or, why don't you go ahead with your comments and then we'll go to Councilmember Lambden.
Okay. Primarily, I think that I just want to highlight a couple things. One, police, staff, and the community in general historically do know that I do want to champion our need to reimagine the general approach to pretty much everything in our city, whether that's housing, whether that's, economic development, whether that's public safety. And for this particular conversation, we're focusing on public safety. One of the things I did want to highlight was that early intervention is in community needs is actually the greatest prevention to crime. That is why it's so important for me at least, to tackle the community issues through efforts of raising the minimum wage, whether it's housing rights, tenants' rights, and much more. I want to remind the public, and I've had a lot of conversations since June till now, and just primarily since I've been on council, that systemic change does take time. And I know I'll continue to work towards improving our community, but this happens through listening. And that is why I want equal representation when we talk about, whether it's the call center, whether it's the fire department, whether it's, the police. I just want us to all understand that. And as such, I do try to meet with all types of people to understand the concerns in our community, staff and resident alike, because it's a joint effort. The goal I have is definitely to improve the city for all of us. And I've said this countless times that this conversation should not be a polarizing issue, but a robust discussion of how to address the problem at hand. And in my conversations with residents have shared a number of things that although they've been working from home, they have experienced significant car theft and property crimes, and not only just car break-ins, but complete, stolen from their parking lot or driveway, if you will, and much more. Residents also expect better response times, efficiency, and sensitivity from our police department. And we truly can address all of this. And I know that it's going to take some time. One of the other things that some residents have shared is that it's hard for South Hayward residents to be able to go to the police station. And if they've asked, I guess, multiple times for a rotating center. And I know you guys have a substation in Tennyson that's, open and closed, not exactly sure of the status at this point. But I do want to address some of these concerns. And then I do want to talk about the facts, and this is not something that's digestible for all people to hear, but I do just want to state this to the viewers and the residents. Crime is going up, theft, car break-ins, a wide variety of other things that have not been discussed. As our chief also stated, last year we had 11 homicides in the city of Hayward, right? And that's, to be honest, unheard of in a lot of ways. It's troubling as well, and it doesn't feel as safe. Our budget is uncertain as we move forward. Director Clausen, who always briefs us, can speak more to that. And we have social justice issues that have gone ignored for decades, if not centuries, that we do have to address. And I'm definitely committed to doing more for all of this. And it's because this is not mutually exclusive. We are actually one community, and we very much can address some of these things. So there is a need in my conversations with staff as well as residents, there is a need to have a staffing level analysis to address the concern in the spike in crime, because investigations need to take place. And there are certain laws that actually limit what we can truly do. I think our chief can talk about wobblers, which I personally hate, and some of those things, right? So if your car were to be broken into and there's an analysis of like something being less than $950, it's a citation versus a true pursuit of finding or giving you guys justice. So these are things that are at the state level and not necessarily at the local level. So I do just want to highlight that. And with that being said, this is as we are making a transition of homeless and mental health calls and the call center to the fire department, which is something that I definitely want to pursue. The fire department, every single firefighter are fully trained paramedics that are more equipped to serve this population. This allows PD to focus on their core scope of work. This is the big picture to me for reimagining public safety and addressing the immediate needs with a vision towards working towards a bigger future for all of us around public safety. Now, I also want to highlight that I think it's important to recognize Hayward Police Officers Association, the Firefighters Association, and SEIU's good faith effort on many of the requests on this journey regarding public safety. And I know from my requests, starting from the very beginning of mental health training to even this conversation, they have been very open. We don't always agree on the details and exactly, the nuance of it, but and the reasons why we want to pursue certain things, but it is affecting their jobs. And I just want to highlight that. And the Police Officers Association, in fact, have actually shared they have immediate concerns around their general safety and their work environment. And it's not exactly what people think. It's the mere fact that HPD have not even had their vaccinations for the coronavirus. And I personally think this is ridiculous. And I have shared an email with our chief or city manager, and I know that it's slightly above us in some of the protocols that are being done at the county and state levels. But it's completely ridiculous. And I do think it's a dereliction of duty personally, because PD and fire and, even our call center and so forth, they can't necessarily work from home, right? So we have to put their safety at top of mind. More needs to be done. And so as we transition collectively and have partners in our staff to make systemic changes, we must also address their concerns where appropriate. So I do want to highlight that thus far, and I would love more data, and you guys know that, I want to be cautious of how we spend our funds. What are the success rates and as I said, as our citations, our arrest, or, did we solve a crime or not, things like that. And making the public safety as a whole more accessible to the public, but then also more responsive, more efficient, and more culturally sensitive and appropriate for our changing environment. I think that's the plan. There's not much to discuss in this particular budget department review or staff item, in my opinion. And the one thing I do want to highlight is Measure C was noted in this staff report. And the purpose of the ballot measure, besides public safety and emergency medical services and so forth, is also safe spaces for after-school homework and tutoring. I have not heard any conversation regarding that. And I know our library director has worked incredibly hard to make the library more accessible, especially during shelter in place. But these are the things that Measure C was actually voted on to support. So I do want to highlight some of those concerns I have, but at this point in time, I don't have any more than this. So one of the other things I do want to mention is lawsuits. I do want to see how much money is spent, not only from the city, but just in general in regards to lawsuits regarding and around what areas within the city around public safety, both internally and externally. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I just wanted to comment on your comment about law enforcement vaccinations, because yes, that is an issue. As you said, it is above our level. It's determined by the protocols that were put out at the state level and then the county level. But this morning, the city manager and I and the police chief were all on the call that Supervisor Richard Valle has for the cities in his area. And Ms. Canlin, is it the county health director, Kelly?
Colleen
Well, no, but the woman who was at
Dr. Clannon.
Clannon. Yeah. So we that point was made, and I hope that we were heard by the county, and we'll continue to talk to them. But at this point, it's been said that they're almost through with the 1A, which was basically healthcare workers and people who were very elderly, care in care homes and the care home facility personnel. That they're almost through with that. They'll go into 1B, and law enforcement officers are in 1B. So we should be getting to that really soon. Sarah.
Thank you.
Lamnon.
Otherwise known as Sarah. It's totally good. Thank you. So thank you for this report. I really appreciate the opportunity to kind of dig in as we have had conversation about where are we spending the money, et cetera. It's really helpful to have this deeper dive than we can do in kind of our normal budget sessions. So my first question is kind of around the patrol structure. So 92 officers. First, a budget question just to make sure I'm remembering correctly. So our general cost when we think about sworn officers is somewhere in the 200 to 250,000 per person range. Seeing Captain Matthews nod. Okay. And then on a given shift, there's 9 officers for one officer per the 9 beats, so 9 officers. And then if I recall correctly from earlier conversations, there's some infrastructure that's sort of behind them, supervisors and so on. So can you speak a little bit, whoever can take this question, kind of tell us a little bit more about what is that structure when you're talking about a shift, if that makes sense?
Sure, I can handle that one. So the way that the patrol division is set up, there are 7 patrol teams that provide 7-day a week, 24-hour a day coverage. There's 2 day shift, 2 swing shift, 2 midnight shift, and then an overlap shift that kind of fills in some of the gaps there. And the number 9 comes from the MOU with the Hayward Police Officers Association. That's the minimum number of patrol officers that can go out on a shift. But generally speaking, when we shift bid, we're usually putting 12 to 13 patrol officers per shift. And I think that you'll find, as the year progresses, people take vacations, people get sick, people get injured. And so there's a little bit of flexibility there for each team to make sure that we're not going out below 9 officers, 1 per beat. A little bit nuanced, but generally speaking, every patrol team has 2 supervisors, 2 sergeants, and a lieutenant that serves as the watch commander. The city is kind of divided in half at Harder Road. So you have the north end and the south end. There's usually a supervisor responsible for the officers that work in the north end, and then a supervisor responsible for the officers that work in the south end, with the lieutenant or the watch commander having oversight of all patrol operations when that person's working.
So, and just to jump in for a second, so that, because that was my next question, was how does district command fit in? So that's what you're talking about when you say north end and the south end. We have to also talk about that as district command. Is that right?
The district command is separate from patrol, but yes, they're divided into a north and a south with the same geographic boundary. So that Harder Road corridor, if it's north, you're in Northern District Command's territory. And if it's south, you're in the Southern District Command's territory.
Thank you. And then just one last thing on this structured. I really appreciate the opportunity to understand, basically, how does this work?
Sure.
So what you mentioned District Command isn't part of patrol. So tell me a little bit about what it is that they're doing and how that fits together.
So the District Command folks, so patrol is responsible for answering all the 911 calls, right? So when people are in crisis and they need the police, patrol is the first people in on those. District Command is kind of its own entity, and their primary responsibility is dealing with kind of some of the long-term neighborhood blight issues. So things that in the grand scheme of things, wouldn't carry the same weight in conversation as, say, a homicide, but, you have abandoned car issues, illegal dumping issues, just, problem addresses that the officers are constantly responding to. And so they have the autonomy to kind of address some of those from a long-term standpoint rather than responding to a call for service, doing what you can right there, and then moving on to the next one.
Gotcha. Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you.
And Councilmember Lamnan, I think
Yeah.
to help out a little bit, some of the emails that you receive from the council with the longstanding problems with some of the lots and some of the things down off Mission Boulevard, those we refer to District Command. The homeless issues, a lot of the folks in the Navigation Center, because of their familiarity with the homeless population, a lot of those referrals came from our folks at District Command. And keep in mind when we engage the homeless, 100% of it is complaint driven, meaning our community's calling those issues in, and District Command is usually the group that will go out and take care of it. And it allows for them to have a little familiarity and a great relationship with the folks that they service in a lot of these areas. And it allows for a more compassionate response, as opposed to our patrol officers who kind of go from, sometimes they can get a little busy and go from call to call. District Command can really go a lot more hands-on and do a lot more service referral.
That's helpful. Thank you. And I think, as this sort of bleeds a little bit into the next item, but as we start to look at how do we respond to what the needs are and who it is that needs to respond to those, it's helpful to understand how it's currently set up. Thank you. And then some of my other questions were answered, so I'm just quickly going through my list. One last item is on Youth and Family Services Bureau. It looks like currently most of what they're, sorry, let me think how to say this. It's my understanding that they try to respond to needs as they arise in the community, regardless, sort of agnostic of who it is that's asking, or age range or what the need is, but that the primary sources of funding for YFSB are kind of the grants that were identified, and therefore I would expect that the majority of the work that YFSB is doing kind of follows that too. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes.
Okay.
It is, but as we talk about this reimagining, and I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, that division or section would be one that definitely would bear a lot of fruit in expanding and increasing the workload to go beyond just the youth and into the adult section.
Definitely, and I'm glad you said that. And I think that's my one comment as we're kind of going forward. Is as we're engaging in this multifaceted conversation about where do we go from here, and we come up on budget questions. Some of the things I'm going to be thinking about, and I'm asking for the department to think about too, are kind of what are some of those unmet needs? What are the calls for service, for instance, that YFSB is not able to currently respond, and what would it look like from a staffing level if they were able to? What are some of those high needs? What would it look like, for instance, for some of these long-term issues, if it was these alternative responses, if that's what gets teased out of the community conversation? It's certainly what got teased out of our community survey. What does that look like? And where is the right place for that to sit? Is it PD? Is it community services? Where? Because there's certainly overlap with what a lot of our departments do, including fire and maintenance services. And then lastly, also, are there technology things? Certainly, as Councilmember Wahab mentioned, data is an important part, and the community has pointed to this as well, that both understanding what's coming into the department, what are the outcomes from those interactions, and what are the technology tools that make it easier to have that data, to create the transparency for the community to be able to respond, for our staff to be able to respond to the community to give input. All of those kinds of tools are some of the questions that are floating around my head as we look at these various budget issues. So just wanted to surface those as we're having this conversation.
Not just yours, council member. They're also at the state and federal level. And some of them, as Captain Matthews said earlier, we're going to be required by law to report these numbers out and to provide that data. And just it's kind of like in line with the President Obama's open data initiative, and just being able to present these numbers out. Right now, we're going through and looking at our technology, see what the capabilities are and where the gaps are, and attempting to fill those. And just go back a little bit to the Youth and Family Services Bureau with the COVID shutdown of the schools. We've been able to repurpose them a little bit. As an example, we had a death, and the family was really taking it hard because it was a young person that passed away. And the adult family members were having a hard time, and Youth and Family Services were able to provide counselors for that family to really help them get over a rough patch and to really kind of quell some things that were happening inside that home. And it just gave us kind of a glimpse at what it would look like to increase the staffing there and to be able to spread the services of YFSB out further.
Exactly. Yes. And to even, and I'm glad you raised about the state and federal issues too, because some of those are reimbursable, but we're going to have to be able to track them to get that. And I know our staff has been doing a great job of that during FEMA. And it sounds like with the SB 22, that's going to be an ongoing need. So I appreciate the piloting that you're talking about for YFSB and the ongoing evaluation that you mentioned as well. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So a couple of questions. First of all, what would the typical growth rate in a different kind of year where, we didn't have COVID, we weren't cutting budgets in general, and we weren't also focusing on police because of issues that occurred last summer. What would the growth rate have been of the police budget in past years? Do you have a ballpark on that? I'm trying to remember myself, but I think it's always generally more than 1.1%.
So Mayor Halliday, you just summarized my career since I arrived here, right?
Yes. So that's why I was looking to the city manager, because she has more of a historical view of budgets.
And I can.
You're doing a good job of keeping expenses down, Chief Chaplain, I guess. But I think my point here is that when I saw that, I thought, we were asked to cut the police budget, and here it's increased by 1.1%. But then I realized that's probably a very low number compared to other years. And the main reason is, as you can see, the major part of the police budget goes to salaries and benefits. And especially with regards to benefits, and especially with police, those costs have been going up, and that's not really within the city's control, because those are CalPERS benefits, and then the salary increases are negotiated through contract. So really, that is to me, that seemed like a very low increase.
And I would say historically, we've used 2% as kind of the budgetary factor of increase for the, sort of the city's budget year over year. And so 1.1% obviously is less than what we would have historically assumed. So, and yes, you're absolutely right. Those increases are mostly due to contractual obligations for salary increases, or CalPERS contributions for retirement, and medical benefits. So, and those, medical benefit increases alone can exceed 10% a year. CalPERS, as we all know, contributions have increased dramatically in the last 10 years that I've been here.
And the irony is we're losing officers to we're losing officers to other departments with better pay and benefits.
So, then I was going to say, well, you're doing a great job of holding the costs there, but there's a 28% reduction in personnel expenditures in the chief's office. Does that have to do with personnel being moved around, or how did that happen?
A lot of the cuts were due to consulting services and some of the training that we could not, and travel associated with training, to flying folks to training across the country and through the state. And so we were able to reduce costs through those measures, and also through some of the consulting services, because during the pandemic and the shutdown, it allowed us to almost kind of organically save because of the things we could not do.
Okay. I think that makes sense. I was wondering, the cost of the jail is $3 million and the cost of the communication center is $3.6 million. The communication center, basically that's dispatch, right? That's all, the whole, and it just seemed to me like, I mean, our jail is very small. Why is the jail so expensive?
Well, I think the jail provides the ability to kind of mask one of our shortcomings, which is staffing. Just to give you an example, if an officer arrests someone and we didn't have that jail here, they would have to take a trip all the way out to Dublin to Santa Rita jail to book that prisoner. So the trip there and back just alone, you're talking about taking an hour, probably about an hour plus of an officer out of service. Then there's the problem once they get on scene at the jail, how long that process would take to book the individual to Santa Rita jail before
I think it's a different question that the mayor's
Yeah,
asking. So I think it's the positions that are staffing. So the jail is staffed by community service officers, which are more expensive typically than dispatchers and call takers. So there's two levels of positions in the dispatch center. There's the higher level dispatcher, and then there's an entry level call taker. In addition, there are a number of positions in the dispatch center that are funded by Measure C funds, so they wouldn't show up in the general fund budget. So there's
a lot of people in the communication center, and how many people do we need in the jail? It's a pretty small jail, but that just jumped out at me. And then finally, I just wanted to ask about animal services, because a lot of people have, wondered, or if that really needs to be a part of the police department, or, is there some other way to, so can you tell me why animal services are in the police department?
I think traditionally, so one of the functions of the Animal Services Department is to conduct investigations. And so I think that's kind of why it's been housed within the police department. There's animal control officers who go out and do animal abuse investigations and address some of the other, kind of like district command, deal with some long-term complaint related issues involving animals. And so, again, particularly for the investigative piece, when we're looking to prosecute somebody for an animal related crime, that's got to go, through the police department to the district attorney for charging.
And Captain Matthews, if you don't mind, when I met with the animal services staff earlier, I guess probably in the fall. And one of the things that they talked about that was very important was having access to the police databases. So particularly for our animal control officers who have to go in and deal with dangerous dog situations or potentially impound animals, it's helpful for them to be able to access the criminal history of a property so they know what they're going into and whether they're going to need backup or other resources to support them as they go into that property. So that's one of the things we haven't talked about is the only way they can get access is that because they're under the police department umbrella, or are there other ways for that? So that was one of the reasons that they gave for why it's important for them to be housed under the police department.
I think most people think of animal services as the animal shelter and the stray cats and dogs and adopting out, and that doesn't seem so much like a police matter. So maybe there is some sharing there that can go on, or separation. I think I agree certainly with Councilmember Ohab that we need more data or more consistent data. And I think we're on track, but it's been really off. And, I've been on council for a long, long time. And it seems like we used to get kind of, regular statistics. In fact, they used to put them out regularly in publications and identify by beat. But we don't really have that anymore. We don't have a regular, and I just feel like we've lost that that ability to look at the comparison year on year. Is crime down? How do we really know if we're changing the way we look at things? And so we need to get that straightened out. We need to get a consistent way of keeping data so that we can, compare apples to apples in the prior year.
I think one of the, Mayor, just if I can jump in, because I think this happened before Chief Chaplain came on board, but one of the reasons that I think we went away from those reporting was because of the crime mapping tool that was put on the city's website, which actually allows people to go in and get, sort of pull the data that they would like to see. And it does allow you to sort of target a neighborhood and look at the data in that particular neighborhood and look at different, I think you can also look at historical data, if I remember correctly. But I mean, I think there could be some benefit. And I think, preparing the type, part one crimes, doing a quarterly update to the council year over year, so the last 5 years, that's, I think, relatively easy for the team to pull. I think, ideally we would eventually go to a sort of dashboard type, system on the city's website that really allows for more sort of real-time data around 911 calls. But some of that is going to we have some technology systems that need to get updated first around our dispatch system and some other things that are a little dated and don't allow us to track data in a way that I know the chief and Captain Matthews would like to.
Yeah. And so I'd like to see us really, really work on that, because I think, it tells us whether the approaches we're taking are working or not, or, and I think in some cases they do. And then I just go back to the community policing, what that means. Let's really talk about what that means. And in my view, we get these calls. I mean, right now, I have to say I'm getting, it's cars, it's improper use of cars, and it's racing through neighborhoods, it's donuts, and I don't mean the edible kind. And people, maybe because people are home more often and they're seeing it more, or I don't know, this usually happens late at night, but that's one big problem. It seems to happen throughout the city. How do we work with our residents? We obviously can't do it. The police force itself is spread thin, and we need that community cooperation. This has been a year now almost that we haven't been able to get, have our community services officers, get out and have meetings with neighborhood groups. I think those things really help and we give a lot of information out about how people can help protect their own homes against crime. And so I'm looking forward to when we can get back to those things happening, because I think that's a really important part of our department. And then finally, it's, taking resources away from the narcotics division at a time when we know that serious drugs are a big driver of not only crime, but just human tragedy, the heartbreak that's happening in families due to, people getting addicted and then, not being able to get unaddicted. And so I'm sorry to see less emphasis on the narcotics division, but I also think that brings us to that issue and just mental health issues in general. And it's where we've been talking about this all summer, and where I hope that we can go in some of these pilot projects that hopefully are going to come up from the next item that we are going to be discussing, is just how we address those mental health issues in a better way, but than just sending police. And, and I know Councilmember Wahhabi, you've been talking about fire. They are trained paramedics. They're trained medically. I'm not sure, they're any better equipped than our police officers for dealing with mental health issues. I think we need mental health professionals, and I think we need the cooperation of our county. And I will say that I and the other mayors of Alameda County are united in this belief. And yet we, in a couple of years of trying to talk to our county supervisors and get this attention addressed to this, we haven't been nearly as successful. In fact, I don't know that we've been at all successful, but we're continuing to work on it. And whatever anybody who's on this attending this meeting right now, especially in the police department, can do to try to help get the resources we need in the mental health services that are provided by the County of Alameda, and get the cooperation with law enforcement that we need to try to help more people rather than just arrest them. So,
Mayor, can I address that briefly?
Yes.
We're working with, I've had the officers logging when they call for the CAT teams. That's the community assessment and transport teams, the mental health teams from the county. Right now they just don't have the staffing. There's just not enough of them. They've been responsive when they can, but there's just not enough of them. But our folks, when they go out on these calls, they're extremely thoughtful. I listen to the air constantly, and I hear the planning and preparation. They don't just show up at these things and let whatever happened happen. There's a lot of planning that goes into the approach of these situations, which is why in the last 12 to 24 months, we've met with a lot of great success in de-escalation. And then you add in there the times that the CAT team are available, respond out. And keep in mind, it's still labor intensive for PD. When the CAT teams come out, they insist we stay on scene with them the entire time. So it's not like we're doing less with regards to hours the staff required to deal with these situations. It just means the situations are being handled a little bit better. And we do have the mental health professionals on scene to help us with the dealing of some of the mentally ill people we encounter. So we are definitely leveraging and utilizing the county mental health teams. It's just literally not enough of them.
Well, you bring up a good point in that, we hear about the incidents that go wrong. We always hear about those. And there really haven't been. I mean, it's not like, I'm not minimizing in any way some of the ones that have happened that we all really wish hadn't. But what we don't really hear about are the situations that you're talking about. You don't want to publicize. I mean, these are private, people deserve their privacy. But if we could find a way to, in a way that is, that we're not identifying people per se, but letting, getting some assessment, at least at the council level, of just what you were just talking about, because I don't think that we see that in, we just hear about the ones that don't work out very well. So anyway,
so I have two clarity concerns about the discussion that happened. Number one, I did want to address our city manager. When you said that data, we used to have it, but, people can kind of look into, certain geographic territories and so forth. What was your point with that?
I was just addressing the transition. The mayor said we used to get data and crime statistics on a more regular basis to the council. And I said, I think the reason that we went away from that was because the police department implemented the crime mapping tool online. And so instead of providing that data to people, that we directed them to the crime mapping tool so that they could create their own parameters for how to look at the data by neighborhood, by year, by different crime types. So that was the point. I was just trying to address the mayor's concern that we used to provide this data to the council, and why don't we do that anymore? And I think that's probably one of the reasons that we moved away from that.
And I wouldn't have asked the questions if I had remembered that. And I actually have looked at those things, but I just, being more of a paper-oriented person, I really forgot about it. I could always go on that tool. It's just that when you got that little newsletter every month, you looked at that and you remembered it. I don't think to go online. And
no, I agree. I like the blotter myself too, just because you can see it. I do think that, and I have used the tool myself, and that's why I was a little questioning some of the are we trying not to do it, or it wasn't clear. Sorry. But I do want to say that I still think that we have to highlight it maybe once a month ourselves, whether that's through social media. Hayward PD has their own social media as well. And then to the mayor's point regarding mental health, and we know that mental health and homeless calls are the most vulnerable to, as you said, family tragedies and the incidents that we don't want to occur with our PD. The reason why I keep pushing fire, and I'm not going to let this go, is because they are paramedics. They have a medical training. Every single one of the firefighters are that. They also, if we remember, the first firehouse clinic in the nation is Hayward's, with our chief creating that in South Hayward. And instead of the way that police tend to handle it right now is if they do have a mental health case, they either ask for John George or something, and those are usually past capacity. I agree with you, Mayor, and all the other mayors that the county needs to do more. But the CAT team that is constantly mentioned, I do want to say that it's a countywide team. They're run by the Falk ambulance service. There's not that many of them. And in my conversations with staff and some of the ideas, and again, I really want to promote ideas and just the option of a pilot project, there would be 24/7 service within our potential planning. So I do just want to highlight that there's a lot of traction and interest in this particular idea. So I don't want to shut it down just because it hasn't happened elsewhere. We could literally be nationwide changing the face of how we handle mental health and homeless calls. So I really will just keep, advocating for that because I think it's a great concept, and let's test it out.
But also, if we really had better long-term treatment, you would have
100%. I agreed with you. That's the state, federal, and even local issues. So I agree with that, as well as education and so much more.
All right. Well, thank you. And with that, unless anybody else has anything to add, Sarah, we're going to move on to the item number 2 on the agenda, which is really exciting, I think. And that is a review of the policy workshop participants and overview of the lean innovation that project that we're about to embark on. So who's going to start us off on that? Again, I see Mary Thomas here. Is she?
She is. So I will kick us off and then turn it over to Mary relatively quickly, who I don't think we are going to do a huge presentation, but just I think the council, we committed to coming back and just providing a brief update based on the meeting that we had in December with the committee. A lot of progress has been made since then. Have been able to get a really, I think, an outstanding list of participants for the workshop from our boards and commissions, and also from our city staff team. And then, really just excited to embark on this process and do exactly what Councilmember Wahab and the mayor and everyone else has been talking about, which is let's test out some of these ideas. Let's talk about like what are the impediments, what are the obstacles, what would need to happen, what's already happening. It's really, I think it's going to be a great learning opportunity for everyone, myself included. So I'll turn it over to Mary, who can talk through the process a little bit.
Great. And I have a very short PowerPoint that I'll share my screen just so you can follow along visually. And let's see. If I do it that way, can you guys, if I put it in slideshow, does that work? Are you all seeing a slideshow? Okay, yeah. Great.
Yes, you can see it.
So yes, wonderful. So just to remind you, the goal here, the proposal we brought in December was for an 8-week workshop. That would be between February and April. And there will be 4 to 5 teams that are made up both of community members as well as staff members. And then the project team will lead these sorry, it's confusing. The leaders will lead these teams, these workshop teams, through a series of lean innovation exercises with the goal of identifying some potential pilot concepts that could be brought to the Council Budget and Finance Committee and could be the basis for some pilot projects to include in the fiscal year 21-22 budget. So we're working on a tight timeline. Typically, we would try and do lean innovation over a slightly longer process, but we want to bring this back to you by April so that you can, have your deliberations and discuss with the budget in mind. So we reached out per the conversation in December. We prioritized commission members, and we reached out to all the commissions. We got commission members from most of the commissions. I believe we have the Community Services Commission, the community advisory panel to the chief of police, the library commission, the Keep Hayward Clean and Green task force, the youth commission, and then one of the members also just got appointed to the planning commission. So almost all of our commissions are represented here.
Not yet, Mary.
Oh, not yet.
Yes, it's Tuesday, next Tuesday.
Sorry. Well, preview. So, okay. And so these are we tried to, well, 13 people applied. And then in addition, a member of the Glad Tidings community applied, and we felt with the relationship the city has with that church, especially on this issue relating to the public safety issues, that we felt that person, even though he's not currently, Wade Harper is not currently on a commission, that we invited him to be a part as well. So, oops, I apologize. So those are the committee members. They make up a fairly decent representation of age as well. And then the staff members, we pulled from Hayward Police Department as well as non-Hayward Police, and then do have 3 members from the fire department on the roster as well. It's a lot of people. We ended up with 34 people. We're excited that people were so interested. Because it's so many people, we might have 5 teams instead of 4, just to make sure that everyone feels like they get to participate in their teams. I'm happy to answer questions about our process of selection, or if you have any, concerns, I'm happy to listen to those. I did want to say we finalized the dates for the workshops, so those were in the staff report. They will be, all sessions will be from 5:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. at night. They'll be on Zoom. Right now, the plan, and happy to take comments on this, the plan, because these are going to be meetings and we'll have breakout rooms, we have to be in Zoom meetings. There's not really a way for us to have, it's not a webinar, or it's not a panelist kind of situation. So it's hard for us to have community members just log in and listen. And so what we'll probably do is videotape these or record these and then put them on the website within 48 hours of the workshops. But I'm happy to take comments on that. And then, let's see, the last slide I have is I wanted to show you, we've updated the website. So it has all of the, it's hayward-state.gov/HaywardSafe, and has all of the different staff reports, the survey, the map of the data. So all the stuff we've been working on for the past 10 months, as well as an update on the policy innovation workshop. And we also are inviting people, community members who aren't in the workshop but want to be part of it, to sign up on the website to be community advisors, because the workshop teams will be doing some, they'll want to run their policy ideas by community members, maybe do some dry runs or sort of tabletop exercises to see if their proposals indeed are feasible and troubleshoot any issues. So we're inviting community members to sign up there, and then we'll contact them and kind of assess their interest. So that is the PowerPoint. And I'm happy to take questions. I also have to say that this was a team effort. I see Nick and Laurel and Captain Matthews are all on this call, and we can all answer questions.
Okay. Again, let me just start with one question, because it's on my mind. Are you going to, so these 35 people will be divided up into maybe 5 teams, and then they will start meeting. And so each team will be meeting on each of those nights that you've, put on the schedule, correct?
So those meetings are more workshop sessions where we'll be leading them through a series of exercises to help their team move forward. And they'll be in breakouts and come back to the main session. But then they're expected to meet in addition, because those are only 4 meetings and they'll have 8 weeks. And so we'll be helping them set those up.
At what stage are these pilot projects that there are, or at least is each team going to be assigned like a problem or an issue, or how is that going to work with, or will they be working on the same thing, or?
Yeah, that's a good question. We don't fully know yet because of the process, but I'll explain. So we're gonna individually interview all 35 people ahead of time, the project team, so that we can understand what particular concerns, passions they're bringing to the conversation. And that will give us some sense of maybe the top issues that are raising to the surface. But then during the first meeting, the goal is to, one, set some common understanding of our goals and make sure that we're all getting to know each other, but then to do a brainstorm of all the different problem areas or pain points in lean innovation terminology that people have. And that will float kind of the top topics. And then we'll actually send out a survey and ask people which ones they're most interested in working on and create the teams from there. So by the second meeting, they'll know what team they're on.
Okay, thank you. That answers. All right, well, I do see one hand raised from our attendees. So we'll go to Suzanne. Suzanne, are you having trouble? I'm sorry, I'm not able to move.
Is she on the phone or is she via Zoom?
She has her-
She's here.
I'm here, I think. Sorry, it took me a minute for that to come up.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry. I missed the first about 5 minutes of this meeting, so I missed a few things. And I see that the HPD is offline, and the first thing I wanted to do was to tell them, Chief Chaplain and all of HPD, thank you for all the work they did and in discovering Michaela Garrett's kidnapper and killer. And that's probably been said before in other meetings. I haven't been attending other meetings, but I just wanted to put that out there. And I think I misunderstood the structure of tonight's meeting. I thought that you guys were going to comment and question, and then the public could then question after that. So I'm probably out of step. I want to address the issues about the defunding of HPD. And the first thing that I thought was alarming to me was that there's actually 46 openings still in HPD, and here we are talking about defunding them. So I think that's really, really scary to me as a person who's been here. I live in the house I grew up in. I've been here my whole life. And then the other thing you guys talked about was district command. I know you guys were questioning Chief Chaplain about that. And I want to let you know that district command and the crime prevention specialists that I've been dealing with, Mary Fabian and Gail, I can't remember her last name. Mary's my crime prevention specialist. They have been invaluable to my neighborhood here. We formed a neighborhood watch group about 3 years ago, and we teamed up with Mary, based on her guidance about the being a block captain and all that stuff. And she's been so invaluable to our neighborhood. And I just hope that when you guys go through this process of defunding and moving money around and whatever for HPD, that you keep that district command and what they do, because they prevent the police from having to go and attend on just basic calls that the police probably shouldn't have to do. She's helped us in our neighborhood in so many ways, and probably, made it so that HP didn't have to attend every call that we wanted to call in. We communicate with her. We tell her the problems that are going on. She researches it and then creates whatever and fixes the problem. So that's just my concern right now is when you brought up district command, I was really concerned that you guys are thinking, hey, maybe this is a place we can cut. Please don't. They have been so helpful and so invaluable to us and to my neighborhood watch group. And I think they are a huge asset to HPD. And I think that they are extremely helpful in the community service and keeping HPD from having to attend to stuff that they shouldn't have to.
Yes. Thank you. I don't mean to cut you off, and I really appreciate the comment.
Sorry.
I think you're getting to, but we don't actually have a clock, so I was trying to
Oh,
keep.
okay.
I had said 3 minutes at the beginning, but it's a committee meeting and we're looser. But I do want to thank you for your comments, because I think that is what I was trying to get up to, and that
Great.
you know, and it's not just them, although I don't want to take anything away from them because they do great work, but it's you and your neighbors too that have stepped up to work with them to take some, to have concern about your own neighborhood and to take some ownership of how things get done. And I would really echo Suzanne's comments here about how much that is needed and probably need more of it. And it might be something that comes up in one of these topics about how we can expand that, the community
Involvement
model that really means community involvement. So thank you, Suzanne, for your comments. And with that, and I do see a couple more hands up now. So Cynthia. Cynthia?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. Hi everyone. Just calling in again, Cynthia Noons. I actually want to address Mary. I just want to again reiterate thank you for doing all this work. We've spoken a few times before. So thank you for doing all of this and taking some of the considerations that we spoke about when you met with some members of Hey Coco. Super appreciate that. Just to reiterate a couple things, I just was wondering if you had a chance. I know you mentioned that you'll be inviting some community members. Did you get a chance to post that to the public aside from just putting it on the website? Will there be some sort of broadcast? First, that's my first question. And then my other thing, I just want to bring up the speaker prior. That's great that you have such good experiences with HPD, but I think the point of the conversation is also to highlight that not everybody has those experiences. And I think that's why these workshops are being done, to show that like the folks who do have traumatic experiences, that they're not being ignored, that they're being heard, and that's where the issue lies. So I would hope we're not silencing that. And I hope that you as a speaker and as a community member are opening up to see that like your experiences aren't others, and it's traumatizing and it's hurtful when those conversations are being said to silence how other folks like my family has been feeling. So thank you.
Thank you. And I can assure you, I think we certainly want to address the issues that you have been raising as well. So I don't see any other hands raised, so I'll go to my colleagues and we'll start with Councilmember Lamnon this time.
Certainly. Okay. Thank you, Mayor. And thank you to city staff who's been working on this, Mary and the whole team. Sorry, I had a lot of thoughts that came up before the meeting and during the meeting, so I want to try and be organized in how I respond. I don't think I have any other questions. I think they were already answered. So I'll just have a few comments, which is, one is that, I appreciate that the lean innovation is about sort of embracing falling in love with the problem as opposed to falling into a particular solution. And for me, one of the questions that comes up, and I'm wondering, and I'll stop in a minute so you can respond to this, but one of the questions that comes up for me is in that falling in love with the problem space is about defining safety. And, I wanted to go back to the conversation earlier about crime mapping and offer a different way perhaps to look at this question. Not to diminish what was said, but just to offer another perspective, which is I often wonder if we're looking at crime statistics as opposed to outcome statistics, that, are we really safer if we know how many break-ins or robberies there were versus the sorry, I'm still evolving this thought, so I'm not going to be able to say it well, but versus things that were solved, murders that were solved, or it's hard, you can't collect statistics on crimes that didn't happen, but how many open cases there were versus how many closed. And also in thinking about, narcotics, for example, I'm actually not as concerned that we're not as doing as much drug enforcement, as that tends to lead to over-policing in some areas. I'm not saying that drug use doesn't spill over into community impact, but there's more to it than that. And I think focusing on sort of criminalizing drug use may not be getting us to the outcomes we want. On the other hand, I'm also concerned that fraud, that we're not following up on fraud issues. And again, what is it that's leading to abuse of seniors through fraud? What is identity theft? What are we getting at, and how do we really get to safety? And I know I'm not being as clear as I would like, so I'm happy to talk further as possible. But I just want to offer that this seems like a really good opportunity to think about how do we think about safety as a community, and what are the outcomes that lead to that, as opposed to sort of assuming that it looks like the way we've done things before. Which, came from an honest place. I'm not knocking the past. I'm just saying we have this opportunity to perhaps think about it differently. And in that as well is also what things that we're not currently funding might make sense to not fund long term. What are the opportunities in that? I've spoken before about not thinking that SROs as they currently have been envisioned is really getting us where we need to go. So if we don't bring that program back, what does that enable us to do? And that kind of speaks also to the mental health that we were talking about before, of if we have the dollars to spend, but we don't have the current staffing, can we reallocate that? Chief was talking about, mental health services for adults. I've mentioned in the past about restorative justice. What does these opportunities that lend themselves? So those are my hopes for some of this lean innovation work. And I appreciate the process and that this body, and please correct me if I'm wrong about this, that, is that sort of check in place to have, because the meetings themselves don't really lend themselves to public comments, both the website and these meetings, these budget and finance committee meetings that are dedicated to this topic, allow for that public comment time. So I said a lot of things. I'll stop talking and allow city staff to respond. Thank you.
You're muted, Mayor.
Okay. Do you want to respond, Mary? Or any?
Yeah, I'll just say, I think that was part of why we launched the more narrative community conversation focus group process, was to really get outside of the traditional definition of safety in our community. And I think if you look at the themes that came up during those community conversations, those will help inform what the teams will be talking about, thinking about, looking at. And so, and safety shows up in different ways for different people. And so I think I appreciate that comment. And I think that's something we want to be mindful of, is we did do a lot of, was it over 400 conversations in the community? And so I think really honoring that feedback that we got and making it a part of this process, and where there seems to be themes, really diving deeper into those themes and understanding, okay, if people are facing this particular issue, and it might not look like a safety issue that we would have historically addressed or thought about, maybe that's an area where we want to do some brainstorming around possible ideas and innovations and solutions. So that's my sort of 2 cents on that. Mary or Laurel or Nick or any of the other team members want to weigh in on it, but I think that's how I would address that particular comment.
And I will say that part of the homework for the workshop participants will be to read through the summary of all those conversations. And then something else I will say is one thing that I've really learned in the 10 years I've been with the city and working with Kelly on lean innovation is that having that interdisciplinary staff model is where you kind of get out of your departmental silo is a great way to raise kind of the opportunity costs and the different things that you were talking about. So hopefully that conversation comes up.
Great points. Thank you. Excited for the next steps. Thanks. Thank you, Mayor.
And I did also want to quickly mention, per one of the speakers' comments, that we will be sending out an email blast inviting community members to apply to be, or not apply, it's just a sign up to be community advisors.
Okay. Aisha?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, no, so one is also if we can, these are public meetings, right? People can observe them, right? Okay, just not necessarily public comments.
The workshops.
We're working on the technology to see if we can do the meetings and the breakout rooms and have people observe it. If we can't, then they'll be recorded and posted like fairly immediately after so that people can watch it.
Okay. And I do just, I think you guys know this. I've talked about transparency a lot. So I just, want people to at least be able to observe and see the conversation and so forth. I don't know how you guys would do it if you guys had breakout rooms and individual groups. I get that concern. And I also think staff is not fully informed as to what their role is going to be and how much they can ask and talk about and so forth. So the sooner we can get directions or some like real vision about how this is going to proceed, the better for everybody, because I know people are antsy. One of the things I did want to mention to maybe as a suggestion is also if we do have those meetings, if we do just a quick social media blast that says, if you guys have any input on this, please email and have a designated email shared box that can at least be shared with the, I'm going to call them panelists, right? Because I don't know what their the actual formal title is, but basically from the community services, all the different commissions that are from the community side, and then all the commissioners from the, staff side, right? Just so they can at least see, okay, the public is paying attention, based on our last meeting or our future meeting or whatever the agenda is, they have this input. So I think that's just a simple, easy to do, if you will, through social media. I also want to state that I agree with our caller, Cynthia Nunes, who has called in the past. One of the things that I always try to caution when talking about this is, or pretty much any issue that is a little bit more difficult to talk about very openly, is that people have different sensitivities and different triggers. And just because we have not experienced them ourselves or have been on the same journey or anything like that, to not ignore them or think that it's not realistic or, it's a one-off situation. I know specifically even for myself, when I talk about my personal experiences, even growing up in the foster care system, it's very different from even other people that grew up in the foster care system. So it's very similar when people engage with, whether it's the fire department, whether it's the PD department, whether it's, anybody else. And then to our caller, Suzanne, I really do appreciate the acknowledgement of your positive engagement with HPD. I do want people to clearly understand that, at least from my point, and I'm going to say it just very plainly, is that I'm not interested in talking about people's funding unless it's a budget actual item. I'm very much aware of, Councilmember Lamnin asked about, how much does an individual police officer make? Around 200K. And it's not exactly that they make 200K, it's that benefits and Councilmember Lamnin, I'm sorry, I just, this is a previous comment, but it's their benefits, their death benefits. There's a lot that goes into an individual officer and also firefighter, as well as, pretty much any public employee that is not seen at the front end for that particular individual until the full package is seen as per year. My goal is not necessarily, I heard the word defund. It's not that, right? We are looking to see how we can improve efficiencies. So as you said, that the reason why you have a neighborhood watch, the reason why you are in contact with Mary, who's helped you out a lot, we are trying to figure out as a city, as a collective, how we can serve the larger public, everybody, completely and totally. And that basically means efficiencies, right? How can we ensure that the police can focus on their core duties of whether it's solving crime issues, reporting, responding, whatever the case may be, as well as the mere fact that we want to make sure that we have success rates. We caught the criminal. We are able to pursue something and say that this no longer happens, or we did a drug bust, or we did X, Y, and Z. So I just want to make that very clear. To me, the POA and HPD, the fire department, SEIU are partners in this conversation. And, just in the last month's meeting, I want to say in November, when we talked about unfunded liabilities, each of them, the Labor Council, the fire department, and the fire union and the police union signed a letter of support for the referral I made. So we are partners in this. And I know that it's, again, very polarizing, and we shouldn't think like that. We just have to say, how can we efficiently serve the community? And that's why I'm so excited for this particular workshop. And to Ms. Thomas's credit, and to Ms. James's credit, and pretty much everybody that's here, and I know some people aren't on the call, I appreciate the transparency. I appreciate the effort to talk to all members of the community, from Hey Coco to the residents that are incredibly satisfied, to also our staff. And I really just want us to understand that, we are one community. And we benefit to having a better system for all people. So thank you. And I'm looking forward to it. I don't know all the commissioners that are listed. I don't know every single staff member that's listed, but I have faith that discussion will happen. And I want data to be available to anybody that asks for it. Even if it's because I know I have my concept of what I'd like to see in this. I'm sure that internally they can figure out something else just based on discussion, because we haven't had the discussion like this. So thank you.
Thank you. I'll just echo the comments of both of my colleagues. I guess one thing I have to ask is of our staff is, how can you have these lean innovation focus groups without having people in the same room able to put up sticky notes on the board? Because I'll tell you that my introduction to lean innovation, when it was introduced by our city manager to the staff, it was mostly a staff thing to solve problems or figure out how to get things done better. And I would walk into a conference room, and there would be the board in the whiteboard, usually in the conference room, covered with these very well organized and maybe color coded sticky notes, and it was just amazing. And I kind of rolled my eyes a little for a while about what was really happening here. I do have to say, I have a lot of faith in this process. And one of the reasons is that I have seen in the past year that I think that this lean innovation started 2 or 3 years ago, maybe, when the staff really started to get together. And I think we've already seen some good results from it. But I absolutely think we saw some fantastic results in the last year of staff people who had already worked in this manner to come together quickly, figure out how to do a whole bunch of different things that we have done to address the issues that the COVID shutdown has the impacts that it has had on our community and the people who live here. And so I'm now a believer, but is there a Zoom way of replacing sticky notes?
Technology has been evolved for everything. There's actually a really cool tool. We actually used it the other day in a staff meeting. It's in Google, and it's called the sticky notes. And so it's actually, everyone gets the link to this Google Doc, and then you can put they're like little text boxes, and everyone can collaborate and in real time put like sort of virtual Post-it notes up on a little whiteboard. So it's a pretty cool how the
might even be better, to capture something electronically. And
yeah.
So well, I just wish you all well with it. And I'm really excited about the process. I want to be following it, not interfering with it, but following it, and look forward to the other end when we may be discussing some of these things at council. I just, can't wait to see it launched, and wish you all the best. And I want to thank all of the people, both on the community side and the staff side, who have stepped up to be part of this. What we're talking about is doing something better than we have been in our community. I mean, there is always room for improvement in anything. And we've all seen and experienced in some way revelations, I think, especially in the past year, about how policing is done in our community. And we all feel the impacts of when things don't go so well. So I just have a lot of hope that we will get some good work out of this process. And I want to thank everybody in advance, and look forward to seeing y'all roll up your sleeves and get to work, even if it has to be over Zoom, which I actually do think is a shame. I do think people being in the same room and sitting around the table and really being able to look at each other and, maybe have some personal conversations and get to know each other. This electronic way of communicating isn't the best, but I think you can, it is what you have right now. And I think you have the tools and the wisdom, hopefully, to get past the screen and really work together. So with that, and seeing no other...
Mayor, I do have a quick question or two to our city manager and to Ms. Thomas. I just want to ensure that the Post-its and things like that cannot be deleted by another member. Number one, right? Or edited even, right? Just because we want to capture the true thoughts of individuals. That's my primary question.
I think, well, first of all, the group is going to establish norms and ground rules. So I think some of those will be the ground rules that we establish. And frankly, if someone is not there to be a participant and a collaborator and a partner in the conversation, we'd probably have to ask them to leave. And I'm just going to be very blunt about that, because the whole goal of this process is for people's voices to be heard, and every voice to be heard. And so if someone is, taking actions like that, frankly, I would probably ask them to leave the
And I don't think anybody would intentionally do it. I'm just saying also, some people just, let's say I wanted to correct a paragraph. Some people do the strike through, some people do the add comment, right? It's very...
I think we'll check, but I think maybe there's a way to lock the document once that particular brainstorming session is done. And I'm sure the team will look into that and figure out a way to protect the document once the brainstorming session is done.
Track changes, things like that, whatever we can do to just protect the conversation and things like that. So I do appreciate that. It's just, one of those like weird questions I tend to ask. And again, I do appreciate it. I appreciate staff's efforts as well. You guys, everybody on this call that has really worked on it behind the scenes. And honestly, I'm looking forward to it and seeing what happens. And then when will we get our next update?
I think it's in February, probably after the workshop in February. So we're going to work on the meeting schedule next, so we can talk about, Mary, maybe if you could just put those dates back on the screen for a second, so I think they're on my calendar, but just so I can quickly write them down as we go through the schedule and talking with the committee about special meetings.
Let's see, I'm struggling to go. Let me try that one more time.
And Ms. Thomas, it's more just, which meetings do we as council attend versus the ones that, we just observe or don't observe, or however you guys eventually do it.
Got it. And yeah, so these are not really intended. These are the workshop sessions, but I think maybe this can help. So there's the first two are within a week, and then a 2-week later check-in. And then we're actually give the teams about 4 weeks between March 10th and April 7th to do the community outreach and engagement portion. So,
and I think the April budget and finance committee meeting is, if we'll have to see what's on the agenda when we look at the upcoming meetings, but that's the intention for the presentations to be made from either from a representative team leader from each of the workshop teams, or obviously the other members can be there as well.
Okay, and I do want to tell the public that the benefit to this is also the fact that largely in government, when you work for a department, you're in that silo for a very long period of time. It's very few opportunities to really reach out and let's say talk to other departments. So this may actually produce things that we haven't even thought about of how to create a more efficient process in how we serve the public, as well as much more. So looking forward to it, and to staff, I want everybody to keep an open mind and know that this is a discussion. So thank you.
All right. And with that, does anybody, future agenda items, committee staff announcements. Maybe we could get a brief staff update at each of our council budget and finance meetings in between now and April too, the February and March meeting, just any brief update you have about, where we are in the process and what's happening.
We can add that as a standing agenda item. I think in April, when we do the final presentations, we may want to schedule a special meeting. So I think that might be a good to look at the April dates. That seems like it might be most appropriate.
Okay. Any other committee or staff announcements? With that, then, thank you all for attending, and we're adjourned.
Thank you, guys. Good day.
Thank you.